I want to welcome everyone to the podcast. My name is Whaley, and I want to get right into this today because we have a very interesting guest. His name is Dr. Ephram West, and he is here representing the FIA Boat Group. They are seeking funding for a project that they feel will greatly increase the scores on minimum standards tests throughout the country. Maybe we can start with this. What is FIA Boat?
Well, thank you for having me on. We really believe that if enough people became aware of what we are doing, there is no doubt we will get the support we need to continue this effort. FIA Boat stands for Federal Intelligence Assessment Bureau of Assigning Tasks. Let me ask you a question. What do you think the federal government spends on education annually? $180 billion. And do you know how that money gets dispersed? Population, that's how.
That sounds fair. I am not an expert, but I believe the thinking is that states with larger populations have a larger tax base from which to fund education. States with smaller populations have a smaller tax base. Population is the driving factor, but the decision is based more on wealth once you get into disbursement.
I guess we are going to disagree on the definition of the word fair. Our approach is simple in design and has the added benefit of requiring a redistribution of existing funds. We began with the idea that all students, every student in the country, would be IQ tested. But then we found that the states are already utilizing statewide assessment in their schools, allowing us to eliminate this component of the overall plan. The next step was to determine which children met a minimum standard. In most states, a passing score is on a 5-point scale, with 3 being the minimum to pass. In our plan, any child scoring below a 3 would simply be removed from the calculation. Federal funds would then be distributed based on remaining scores. States scoring higher would receive more funding, thus making for a wiser investment. Think of what these smarter children could do with that money.
I want to make sure I understand. Your plan is to divide federal funds by state, weighted towards states with higher scores, while failing students receive no funding at all? What happens to the failing students?
I think that we have to remember that this would be a sliding scale. To answer your question, those students failing to meet minimum standards would also be redistributed. Keeping in mind that these students have no funding, these and sundries would be addressed by assessing existing skill sets. Those failing students able to drive, for instance, would drive the buses or trucks full of other students being redistributed. But I really want to get back to this sliding scale.
Wow, do I have some questions? When you say failing students are redistributed, what exactly do you mean?
That piece is actually very simple. We already have needs assessments from all over the country. Where there is a need, we send a bus or a truck full of low-performing children. But I really want to get back to this sliding scale. This would not be a permanent red line that would isolate failing students in the category of reassignment. I think it better if you imagine more of a window. A window with a top and a bottom that goes up and down.
Okay, fine. What about this window? Tell me about the sliding scale. Is this a chance for low-performing students to get reassessed?
Oh no. Nothing as radical as that. No, we treat the red line as the top of the window. When a need emerges somewhere in the country, we raise the window, further decreasing the divider in the funds distribution equation, while providing more labor to the area with need. A sliding scale.
A sliding scale. But you said a window with a top and a bottom. In this scenario, what is the bottom of the window?
Imagine, if you will, a list of all students in the country. This list is sorted by highest test score to lowest test score. As we slide the window up from the bottom, we scoop up our labor force. Now, imagine the window going higher and higher as labor needs are addressed. At some point, you have 3 parts to your list. You have those above the window, those in the window, and those below the window. That is what I mean by sliding scale.
Yes, I think I understand. But you still have not said what actually happens to those below the window. Above the window, they continue their education. In the window, they provide labor where needed based on whatever skill they happen to possess. Below the window, what?
You don't want to be below the window. What I mean is, if you happen to be in the window, but someone below the window has a skill that is superior to yours, then they take your place in the window. So, you don't want to be below the window. We call that being under the window.
Okay, why do I not want to be under the window?
Because that is where the people are that are not in the window or above the window. Think of it this way. School is good. Window bad. Below window means below bad. The good news is those children below the window don't even count against the budget. You do not have to put them in a bus or a truck. You do not have to figure out what skill they have or where that skill is needed. Nothing. As far as the federal budget goes, these are your very best children. Under the window.
Doctor, if we can just stop talking in metaphors for a moment. Have you actually implemented this program anywhere? And if so, what exactly has been done with the children under the window?
We are not miracle workers, Graham. As I said, there is no budget for the children under the window, so we do not do anything with them. In those cases where we have been allowed to disregard budgetary concerns for those in and below the window, the results have been amazing. As we slide the window up and disregard more children, the remaining funds become highly focused on those above the window. Our program has resulted in 100% of students achieving above all minimum standards.
Isn't that inevitable? If you disregard all students who do not pass these EOC tests, then does that not mean that the remaining students have already passed the minimum standard?
Exactly. And remember, this is at no additional cost. We are simply redistributing already existing funds. When you consider the cost-benefit factors, this is a no-brainer.
Okay, well, I have more questions, but we are starting to get some calls. Hello? Is this Pat from Tennessee?
Yes, I have a question. I just do not understand this. I mean, we are talking about children here. You are talking about redistributing human beings in buses and trucks all around the country based on skill sets because they failed a test. Then you talk about cost analysis and fund redistribution? I am all in favor of filling areas of need, but won't the skill assessment of the failing students have intrinsic cost? That don't sound like resource redistribution, that sounds like a hidden expense. Don't get me wrong, I am the first person to say let the slow ones mow my lawn, but they darn well better be able to start a lawnmower, and I for one don't have the time, money, nor inclination to teach them how. I will hang up and let you answer. Bye.
She makes a good point. Your plan specifically calls for assigning these failing individuals to areas of need based on skill set, but you do not account for how these skill sets will be assessed.
This is an excellent point, and thanks for the question. First off, we are talking about federal funding here. States are free to spend money allocated to underperforming students any way they like. If they choose to keep with the spirit of the program, however, we suggest the construction of a single, large, centralized facility to house those in the window. This facility would be run, of course, by those students with skills in the domestic arena. We imagine this facility being poorly built, drafty and cold, surrounded by a large obstruction, so there are no trees or nature of any kind visible from inside. One very large window, not for visibility, but for those below the window, as we discussed earlier. There would be no entertainment of any kind. In fact, we foresee no electricity or any other permanent infrastructure, thus keeping costs down.
So, the idea is to punish these low-performing students?
Well, no. Of course not. They didn't do anything wrong. We think of it as deterrence. No one would want to be in the window, and this will provide motivation to improve test scores. This also eliminates the need for costly record keeping and tracking of individual children. Beds fill up, areas of need are identified, kids are shipped out. If the beds are full, you are under the window. If you ask me, this is the real genius of the proposal. The simplicity.
Okay. Hold that thought. I want to get back to this, but we have another caller. Is this Jason from Kentucky?
Yeah, Graham. Yeah, I know this guy's work. Dr. Ephram West. This is the guy that wanted to revoke the citizenship of all low-performing students. He wanted to put them in cages and separate them from their families. Yeah, he wanted to send them back to where they came from. This guy is a wacko. I am going to hang up and let you answer. Bye.
Well, first of all, that was a very early version of the plan. And to be fair, it would have cost even less than this one because all of the infrastructure and labor were already in place. As the plan evolved, however, we realized that it was not self-sustaining in that form. I know some of this might sound wacky, but I think that is because we have too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. In our effort to include multiple entities in the planning, we have ended up with something that looks inconsistent in some ways. I, for one, am not entirely in favor of building a centralized facility to house the students in the window. It seems to me that as we currently have a surplus of used Mylar blankets, we can simply utilize those for children awaiting assignment to their labor location where they will camp. We will call these labor campgrounds. Those in favor of building an actual facility with the enclosure blocking the view feel this would be best, however, as it would deter crowds from gathering and looking for their loved ones. They would have no reason to do this, since the enclosure would prevent them from seeing inside. I did vote in favor of painting the walls red, as this will make it easier for the children driving the trucks and buses to find the facility.
I have a lot of questions for you, Doctor, but we are getting a lot of calls. Hello? Is this Mary Beth from Des Moines?
Yes, it is. I am worried about the children. You say this would be a sliding scale. It seems to me that the children near the bottom of the scale would experience a great deal of anxiety not knowing when or if the scale will slide and scoop them up into the window. I will hang up and let you answer.
Well, I actually see this as one of the strengths of the program. For years, people have been trying to employ the corporate model in America's schools. If there is one defining element of corporate America, it is the concept that an anxious worker is a productive worker. Those children who find themselves in the window can rest easy knowing that those remaining above the window have a very strong anxiety tolerance that will serve them well in the workforce.
Wow. Well, I am sorry to say we are out of time. Thank you for being here, Dr. Ephram West. I encourage all people watching to do your own research, check your sources and do your own thinking. Until next time, take care.